Hey, what's up, everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be reading Dragon Harper. So, Dragon Harper is a 2007 science fiction fantasy novel written by the late Anne McCaffrey and her son Todd McCaffrey, and basically kind of continues the Dragon Riders of Pern kind of mythology. Her son basically picked up the mantle pretty much after she passed away, continuing to tell stories in this world that she has created. But prior to her passing, they did collaborate on a few books together, kind of a bit of a passing of the torch, if you will. I don't know if that was meant to be intentional, but it kind of ultimately became that. And Todd has been responsible for a number of really kind of compelling installments in the Pern franchise. This one in particular, which basically deals with Pern essentially suffering from a plague, a virus that is wiping out large sections of the population. And essentially, the story almost has a bit of a Black Plague kind of feel to it in terms of how this disease is spreading, how the measures people have to take to avoid being infected, and the ultimate toll it is taking on this world. And one of the big takeaways I had from this story when I read it, and along with having great characters, deals like the Harper Halls and the Pern, basically kind of civilization, but it really shows how it is a preservation of their culture, and also just how damaging something like disease really is, in terms of not just for the obvious reasons, but how equalized we all are in its scope. It is a threat that they are all facing, that, the conflicts that certain characters have with each other at the start of the story are quickly rendered mute, essentially, in the face of this pandemic. And it is actually a very kind of heartbreaking story. I was not expecting this story to kind of resonate with me on such an emotional level, in the sense that you see people die, and there's this very kind of bleak and or kind of very morose feel to this story, where going into it, and especially the way it starts up, you're not expecting such a sad tale, because that's the best way I could describe it. I mean, there is hope at the end, but throughout the majority of it, it is a very sad story, and it's a very character-driven story. And basically, you see how these characters develop as strong individuals in the face of this crisis, and the price that is paid when you see a lot of innocent people of all ages, perish at the hands of this disease. And it is kind of a sobering reality when you realize that similar things have happened in our history. And again, I was at science fiction and fantasy more often than not operate under the guise of something otherworldly, when in a lot of times they tell stories that resonate with us within history. And if you look throughout history and you read stories of breakouts of plagues, it's very easy to kind of sit back, very removed from it, and kind of almost feel cold or detached from it. But when you see these characters that you are kind of adhere to, you bond with, that you come to love over the course of this narrative, and then you see them going through this, and how this pandemic affects them, and how it is destroying their lives, and what they are doing to essentially put their lives at risk to help and save others. You realize that during all these outbreaks, these plagues in history, at the center of all that, there were people like us, friends and families, lovers, who were dying and losing each other in the heart of all this. And it really, a story that can very easily be just apocalyptic and just very kind of cold and removed when you kind of zoom out all the way. But when you zoom in, you realize that it is a very personal story, and it is a very character-driven story. And it was my big takeaway from when I realized just like how emotionally dense this particular story in the Pern franchise was. And it was a pleasant surprise, but one that took me off guard. But again, it is a story that really shows that ultimately all we really have at the end of the day is each other. That the connections we make are truly the only meaningful things we have at the end of the day. It's not wealth, it's not stature, station. It's who we surround ourselves with, and what they mean to us, and kind of the effect, good or bad, that they have on us, on how we conduct ourselves in our lives. And when faced with essentially annihilation, you realize that in those moments, that's all that matters to you, is who's next to you and how they make you feel. And there are losses in this story that really hit hard, I feel, but really kind of drive that point home. So, I mean, there's not too much to say in terms of the story, in terms of I don't want to give, again, I try with these discussions, I try not to just give you like it's just a Wikipedia rundown of the story, because you could just look at Wikipedia and get that, or preferably read the book. But I kind of wanted to talk more about the emotional takeaway from this story. I mean, the story's got great characters. It's got a great narrative, the way everything plays out. But it is those characters that essentially kind of serve as your avatar for the true emotional kind of weight of the story, and kind of the point of this story is trying to make is that when it's all said and done, it doesn't matter if you're on another planet with dragons. What matters most to you in the end, hopefully, when faced with oblivion, is the same here as it would be on a world far away. It is basically those you cherish most. And when you lose people that are very close to you, suddenly everything else really doesn't matter so much. It's a way to immediately put things in perspective, as well as, it serves as a kind of a call of duty for a lot of people. There are people who would want to do whatever they can to prevent those they care about from kind of succumbing to something like this, and the lengths they'll go to ensure that doesn't happen. But yeah, so Dragon Harper, it is one of my favorite stories in the Dragon Riders of Pern series. It's one of those stories that whenever I think of the franchise as a whole, because there's a lot of books, obviously, in this one, but it's one of the ones that really stand out to me. And it's one of the ones I usually recommend to people because, again, it's not a long read. It's not like it's super dense. So if you have friends who don't like to really read books, it's not a thick, long novel, or you have people, they don't know if they want to commit to a new franchise, or, science fiction, fantasy may not really be their thing. So instead of giving them a massive tome, basically my book, it's a brisk read for the most part, but it is a very good character-driven story with heart. And I know that kind of might sound a little corny and hokey, but that's really the best way I can describe it. And once you read it, you'll understand. And if you have read it, I get the sense that you'll probably know what I'm talking about and kind of understand kind of where I'm coming from in terms of this description. But anyway, guys, Dragon Harper, have you read it? If so, what did you think? How does it stack up into the impressive ledger that is, Anne McCaffrey's work, and Todd McCaffrey by and large as well? If you have not read it, I will leave links in the description section below where you can pick it up, check it out, give it a read, come back, give me some of your thoughts. I always like to know what you guys think, especially for such a long-running series as this, and a series that I feel has influenced a lot of people in science fiction, even fantasy, myself included. It's one of my favorites. So, but yeah, guys, give me some of your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But anyway, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!